The Florida Gators have hired Auburn defensive coordinator Ron Roberts as their linebacker coach, along with a billion other titles. We're going to talk about that here on Locked On Gators.
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another beautiful episode of Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. Happy Tuesday, and it's a very happy Tuesday. I'm Brandon Olsen. Find me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with Whole Nine Sports, Giants Country, NFL 33. And if you're part of the subtext group, you got this information yesterday before the hire happened, that Florida was going to hire Ron Roberts from Auburn. If you're not part of the subtext group and you want to be, join subtext.com/LockedOnGators. Links in the description below. We talk recruiting. There's extra content there. But I can't express enough how happy I am about Billy Napier and Austin Armstrong hiring Ron Roberts to be the defensive coordinator of the team. I'm just a massive fan of this addition for Florida. It's awesome. I think if you've been listening to this show or if you've been watching this show for really basically since Billy Napier got hired, you would know that I'm a huge fan of Ron Roberts. When Billy Napier got hired by Florida, I wanted Ron Roberts to be his defensive coordinator. At the time, Ron Roberts was with Baylor. He had just wrapped up his first season, maybe second season as the defensive coordinator at Baylor under Dave Aranda. And eventually, Billy Napier hired Patrick Toney, which I was also excited for because he's part of the Ron Roberts tree. And that didn't work out. And then Billy Napier hired Austin Armstrong, who is part of the Ron Roberts tree, but also part of the more aggressive bunch of the tree, because you kind of go with a couple of sides. There's the Dave Aranda, Patrick Toney side, where it's like, hey, we're not really aggressive. We're going to give you different looks and play different coverages, and we're going to work with that, and we're going to try to outsmart you there. And then there's what Pete Golding has done and what Austin Armstrong have done, but Austin Armstrong is like the far spectrum of it. Of we're going to be more aggressive. We're going to try to generate pressure quicker, and we're going to try to cook that way. Whereas Patrick Toney, as he kind of got elevated from the high school to college to Louisiana to Florida level, he got less aggressive as things went on. That's obviously not the case anymore. But Ron Roberts being hired as linebacker coach is important for the entirety of this coaching staff, really. It's not just that I love what Ron Roberts has done scheme-wise. When you look at Michigan in the national championship, when you look at the Baltimore Ravens, when you look at Oregon, when you look at Georgia, when you look at Ole Miss, you're going to see a lot of things that Ron Roberts kind of introduced. He's a bit of a pioneer of modern defenses. And the big selling point for Ron Roberts has been creepers. He's the guy when you think of creepers. He's the one that introduced all that. And if you don't know what creepers are, their formal name is replacement blitz. And what it is that you don't show that you're blitzing, but you have a non-traditional pass rusher rush the passer. So your off-ball linebacker, your slot corner, your boundary safety. Everybody is a threat as a pass rusher except for your field corner. So you're a corner who's on the far end, because obviously by the time he gets in, play's going to be dead. But so everyone's a pass rusher there. And then you drop back a typical pass rusher, whether that's your defensive end, one of your D tackles, your jack linebacker. He's the guy that introduced doing that as a normal part of the game plan. And he introduced it specifically, or not, he introduced it and implemented it frequently, specifically to stop the RPO. because so many RPOs read that backside end and determine their read based on that. So his thought process was, well, they're reading if we're rushing or standing up. We're doing neither. We're dropping back into coverage, and we're going to be in the passing lane because a lot of RPOs is a slant or like a short post, whatever you want to call it. And that's how you get yourself in the passing lane. And it's not just getting yourself in the passing lane there in RPOs. It's also just a normal part of a defense because if you have, let's say, your slot DB, your star, your nickel, whatever it is, and they're rushing the passer, and you have that edge dropping back on the other side, then guess what? Unless they knew that you were blitzing that slot defender, the entire offensive line, the protection, is not going to be really accounting for that guy. So you're kind of blitzing, you're generating pressure without conceding coverage on the backside. It's not awesome to have an edge rusher in coverage there. But the point is that by the time they recognize, oh, that's an edge rusher out there, let me get the ball there. Or by the time any receiver recognizes this is an edge rusher, let me sit and they're not going to be able to make a play, the play is done because your slot got in. So it's generating pressure without conceding coverage on the backside. And I know that he's listed as co-defensive coordinator. My expectation is still that Austin Armstrong is going to call the defensive plays and that Ron Roberts is co-defensive coordinator to help with the game plan, but also to afford or to be able to pay him more because you're taking him as a defensive coordinator from Auburn, which again, I believe he left Auburn. He's been like, he tweeted a couple of things and deleted them. But basically that he was unhappy with Hugh Freeze at Auburn. And so he left. And I believe that the big selling point there for Roberts is there were quite a few times in 2023 where it seemed like Austin Armstrong wasn't making adjustments quick enough, where you look at the Arkansas game and KJ Jefferson's going all over the field. And you look at the LSU game and Jaden Daniels is going all over the field. And I will say this, I would have put a spy out there. I'm not sure a spy would have mattered at that point. Like if you look at the LSU game, it would have been Scooby or Manny Nunnery and a spy. And I'm not sure either of those guys can catch Jaden Daniels. I'm not sure if you put one of the safeties in a spy that you would have been able to catch Jaden Daniels and contain him. But I do think that having Ron Roberts will really help when it comes to making the adjustments necessary to be better defensively, to be great defensively. And I think that's where we talk about, that's the huge selling point of if you need to be better, or you do need to be better, but if you want to be better, you have to bring in someone more experienced because you look at who Florida's brought into the defensive staff, or actually let's look at who is here before the start of the 2023 season. Defensive coordinator, Austin Armstrong, edge coach, Mike Peterson, outside linebackers, edge, Mike Peterson. Then they're the only two retained that are on-field position coaches. Then you look at who they brought in. Defensive line coach Gerald Chapman from Tulane and DB coach Will Harris from the Chargers. Very young defensive staff, just overall. It's an incredibly young defensive staff. So now you bring in someone like Ron Roberts, who has 31 years of coaching experience and decades of coordinator experience. And we're kind of, or a decade plus of coordinator experience. And you're kind of talking about a much more experienced coaching staff that's going to make up more for some of the potential miscues or inexperienced mistakes that were made last year. You hope to prevent them this year. We are going to continue talking about this. I mean, just awesome hire. Like this is a home run hire for me. It's just a home run hire for me. We'll continue to talk about it in a second, but first we got a quick word from Jace Medical. You and I spend a lot of time talking together, at least 2.5 hours per week. It's a lot. We get fired up on wins and losses and who starts and who sits and who's hired and who's fired. I'm thankful for that connection we have. I tell you all the time. Today, our chat's going to be a little bit more personal because whether you're on extended travel, bracing for a major weather event like you get so frequently in mid-January, or you're limited by yet another supply shortage. You're covered, my friend. Thanks to our partners at Jace Medical, life-saving antibiotics and a long list of daily medications can be ordered in a 1-year supply. Even ED generics for Cialis and Viagra prescriptions can be ordered. Go online right now at jacemedical.com to receive your 12-month supply on your daily medication. Remember to use promo code Locked On. That's LOCKEDON at checkout for a discount as well. $20 off your purchase. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day we are available daily and free wherever you listen to the podcast. And again, Florida has announced the hire of Ron Roberts, and I think that this is. I said this yesterday during the live stream. I think this might be the best hire Billy Napier has made as head coach of the Florida Gators. Not just this past offseason, just as head coach, I think it's a massive hire. And I'm sorry, I forgot. Maybe it was Brian Gardner in the live chat yesterday that mentioned it. But kudos to Austin Armstrong for wanting to continue to learn, bring his mentor onto the staff. I think that tells me a couple of things. One, I was told when Sean Spencer and Will Harris, when Sean Spencer and Corey Raymond got fired, that the thought process was Austin Armstrong's now going to bring in his guys to the defensive coaching staff. And now he's going to bring in his guys. Ron Roberts is one of his guys. That makes a lot of sense. He brought in other young coaches that I'm going to assume they've got quite a connection because coaching circles are small. Like coaches, a lot of them know each other, even if they didn't work together on staffs. So for me, I would think that this was an easy hire for him. And it makes sense that Austin Armstrong brought in his guys, and you buy into that because Will Harris is incredibly young. I know the connection there is Derek Ainsley through Billy Napier. And you also look at Gerald Chapman from Tulane, and it's like, okay, other young guys that, again, Austin Armstrong probably knows through a very small coaching circle and wants on the staff with him. And so I look at that. And like Brian mentioned, bringing in Ron Roberts shows that Austin Armstrong is still willing to learn, still wants to learn, and is trying to get some help and experience. And that's a great point. It's just a fantastic point that, yeah, it shows that Austin Armstrong recognizes, hey, I wasn't good enough in 2023. Part of that is probably due to my inexperience. Let me bring Ron Roberts in. And I will say, Ron Roberts went to Baylor. Like I will also bring that up. I kept seeing people tweet yesterday about how Ron Roberts wasn't good enough at Louisiana to stay with Billy Napier and that this is a bad hire because Billy Napier's fired him once. No, he didn't. Ron Roberts was still on the staff at Louisiana, and he left for Baylor. Yeah, he got fired to the Power 5 from Louisiana. Does that make a lot of sense? Because it doesn't make any at all. He got a pay raise. Yeah, he kept the defensive coordinator title, but defensive coordinator inside linebackers at Baylor compared to, I believe, just DC at Louisiana. Makes a lot of sense. Even if it's a lateral position move, it's at a much higher level. So no, Ron Roberts was not fired by Billy Napier once. Not been fired by Billy Napier. He's been fired by Dave Aranda. But I do think that it's an important note on Ron Roberts that this is the second time he's been hired by one of his disciples, coaching trees, mentees, whatever you want to call them, that he's been hired by one of them to help run a defense or to run a defense. I'll say help run a defense because at Baylor, he was hired by Dave Aranda, who's probably the biggest name from the Ron Roberts coaching tree, or at least he's the name from the Ron Roberts coaching tree that went on to be a Power 5 head coach so far. There will be more. But Dave Aranda, when he got that opportunity, he went, hey, I want to bring Ron Roberts back. And now Austin Armstrong has the opportunity and he wants to bring Ron Roberts with him. I think it goes to show the kind of relationship that Ron Roberts has been able to build with his mentees and has been able to build and maintain with his mentees that they want to keep bringing him back to their program wherever they may be. And the tweets thing about Hugh Freeze and that's why he left the program, I'm assuming is why he left the program. But this is just, again, it's a huge hire for me, bringing in someone that can contribute what Ron Roberts can contribute. I don't care about the executive, the assistant to the head coach, or the head coach of the defense. I don't care about that extra job title. To me, that's just paying him money to go from defensive coordinator at the SEC to co-defensive coordinator, linebacker coach at the SEC level. But again, I think it's going to help Austin Armstrong pick and choose his shots where he's going to be very aggressive. And it's going to help Austin Armstrong with making adjustments quicker. Wouldn't shock me if we saw like Ron Roberts be in the booth during games and Austin Armstrong down on the field and kind of watch them. Because again, Austin Armstrong's a fired up personality. Like you want that on the sideline, especially if it's someone who also wants to be on the sideline. But wouldn't shock me if you had someone like Ron Roberts in the booth where he could see everything and his experience will help you there. Because again, he's got 30 years of coaching. Ron Roberts has been coaching longer than Austin Armstrong has been alive. That's where we're at. Like Ron Roberts has been a coach longer than Austin Armstrong has been a human. And I think replacing Jay Bateman is huge as well. Linebacker play last year was terrible. Baylor's linebackers when Ron Roberts was there, Terrell Bernard, who not only went to the NFL, but is annihilating with the Buffalo Bills right now. Like that was just a massive addition. And I do think that this is the kind of hire that will resonate with other levels as well. Because, I mean, look at the players that Baylor put into the NFL when Ron Roberts was there. Jalen Petrie, who's with the Houston Texans right now, also having a fantastic season. JT Woods with the Chargers. They put a few corners into the league. They put, I think it was 3 linebackers while he was there. And you're looking at just the resume speaks for itself with Ron Roberts. And to me, that's the huge selling point. The huge selling point is not just, oh, you filled your linebacker spot. Good job. To me, the big selling point is Ron Roberts is here. You look at I know that people talked about his recruiting, and I'm going to pull it up right now, that just what he has listed on 24/7. But Jamonta Waller went to Auburn, and a big reason for that was Ron Roberts. And that's not a secret. That was a fact, that a big reason Jamonta Waller went to Auburn was because of Ron Roberts and how he'd use him. And I said this yesterday during the live stream. If I'm Billy Napier and Ron Roberts and Austin Armstrong and Mike Peterson, I'm texting Jamonta Waller right now. And I'm like, hey, man. Well, okay, I won't do that because that's tampering. But I'm just you up a little bit. Like I'm finding a way to get around the tampering and kind of touch base with Jamonta Waller. Go, hey, we can still use you at Jack. Like we're still looking for a guy. And kind of looked at that. And I mean, Ron Roberts he's listed as only 5 guys all-time commits on 24/7, which it's not out of the ordinary for DCs to not be listed on those kinds of things. But Ron Roberts, for me, I think that he really helps you sell anything that you're trying to sell. You want to sell your linebackers? He's got a proven track record at this point of getting linebackers into the NFL with Terrell Bernard. And just, I think Terrell Bernard is probably the biggest selling point because of how immediately successful he was in the NFL. Like, he didn't play early, but the moment he got onto the field, played fantastic for the Bills. And next year, you're probably going to have Matt Milano and Terrell Bernard there just wreaking havoc at the linebacker room, where, by the way, great defenses have good linebackers. I'm just saying that's what it is. You look at the Ravens, you look at the 49ers, great defenses have good linebackers. So I'll say that. But we are also going to talk about which players I think benefit the most from this hire. And we'll talk about that in just a second. But first, we're going to get a quick word from FanDuel. The NFL regular season and college season period pain are wrapped up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. It does not have to win. Just place a $5 bet on FanDuel and you will get $150 guaranteed. Beautiful. Their boosts have been on fire lately. I've been on fire lately. Up a lot of units in January. Just saying, 2024 has been all green, basically. Visit fanduel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup. I suck at laying up. I'm just saying, I play like a power forward. Visit FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day, we are available daily and free wherever you listen to the podcast. And again, we're going to talk more in depth. The subtext group is going to get a ton of Ron Roberts content just because, like I've said, for years, I'm a massive fan of Ron Roberts and what he brings to the table. But looking at the players that benefit the most from the Ron Roberts hire, obviously it's your linebackers. But specifically, I want to say Shamar James is going to be a massive beneficiary here because of what Ron Roberts will bring to the table as far as you now get coached by a linebacker coach that has gotten multiple linebackers into the NFL, one that's been very young and very successful almost immediately into his NFL career and has the, we'll say, a proven ability and proven translatable skills at linebacker, because that's also an important part where you go, okay, like there's some defenses where it's just that's not going to work in the NFL level. That happens kind of frequently, we'll say, kind of frequently. But now that you have Ron Roberts here, so much of modern defense is partially from Ron Roberts. He brought in, again, he helped usher in that quarters era. He brought in creepers. He helped fire zones are now even more helpful, and sim pressures are even more helpful now because of creepers. And so having Ron Roberts as your linebacker coach and co-defensive coordinator is where I think it really steps up, where I think whoever is going to be starting at Jack for the Gators, if that's TJ Searcy, Kelby Collins, if you do convince Cassius Howell, which I think this helps your selling point, if it's George Gums, whoever the best option is, this helped because now you've got, yeah, he's your linebacker coach, but he's also the guy who made it relevant, made it important, and has helped open up scheme. And I realize that it might seem like just blowing smoke right now, but I'm telling you, this is a genuine huge hire for Florida. And he is going to help the players improve significantly early on. You look at, let's say Manny Nunnery, okay? Manny Nunnery came over from Houston, and Houston, I'm going to read this right now because it just got tweeted out while I was recording this. Ainsley Lee, a former Auburn linebacker, said Coach Ron Roberts took a linebacker who was deemed not good enough to play by a previous staff and helped him be one of the leading tacklers in the SEC. For y'all to say he ain't a good coach is stupid and needs to be examined. Thank you for everything you did for me, Coach. You instilled confidence into me as a player, and I will use everything you taught me daily. Good luck at Florida. At Shamar, you got a good one, brother. So there's that. But you're taking someone who can help teach this defense. Like the big thing about Dave Aranda linebackers, or Dave Aranda defenders, really, is that their IQ is incredible because it is not an easy defensive scheme to pull off. And him being co-defensive coordinator, again, I think Austin Armstrong will be calling the plays still. But I think that with being co-defensive coordinator, Ron Roberts is going to play a bigger role in the game plan here. And so this is where it is important that it's going to be affected by every single defender. Look at Jordan Castell. Jordan Castell is going to have this year, at the very minimum, under Ron Roberts, Jalen Petrie as a safety prospect was incredible. Jordan Castell has better size, better athleticism than Jalen Petrie, and Jordan Castell is going to work with him. They're going to work with Ron Roberts, the guy that helped Jalen Petrie become Jalen Petrie. It's just they cannot be overstated how big of a hire this is. Again, when you look at the young coaching staff now getting a veteran leader in the room, when you look at Shamar James getting there, Manny Nunnery, like I was talking about before I got distracted before. Manny Nunnery came from Houston, where under Doug Belk, who also, by the way, I wanted Florida to hire him as well. But Manny Nunnery came to Florida from Houston under Doug Belk, whose defense is everyone's just, oh, this is incredible. This is awesome. This is such a great defensive scheme. Was basically Ron Roberts' defense. So Manny Nunnery is going to get a huge boost from this because he's going to be playing in a defense that's even more similar to Ron Roberts. Because I mentioned before, you look at the spectrums of the Ron Roberts disciples, and you've got Austin Armstrong all the way on this side of just like blitz happy psycho. And you've got Patrick Toney on this side of like, I'm never sending 5 defenders. It's just not happening. And you look at everybody in the middle, and that's including the sprinkles of Doug Belk. That's including Pete Golding at Ole Miss. That's including Dan Lanning at Oregon from Georgia, runs a very similar defense. Kirby Smart's defense always looks like what Ron Roberts has done. Like you look at modern defenses, Mike McDonald with the Baltimore Ravens, Jesse Minter with the Michigan Wolverines. You look at modern defenses, and the first guy that really did it and really introduced them the way that they've been used is Ron Roberts. And now you have that on your coaching staff. I'm not talking just in your linebacker room. I'm talking on your coaching staff. Your coaches are going to get better because you've got Ron Roberts here with you. That's the big selling point. That's the major selling point about why this is potentially the best hire Billy Napier has made as the head coach of the Florida Gators. Not because he's bringing back someone who was at Louisiana with him. Not because he's bringing back Austin Armstrong's mentor. But because when you look at what you have intellectually on your defensive staff now, you've got all the bright young minds. You've got a pioneer of modern defensive scheme, modern defensive systems. And you've got them together now. Now you're talking about every position coach is going to learn under Ron Roberts and get that Ron Roberts sprinkle of I don't even know what you want to call it, of scheme mindset on them. That's what you're bringing in. And that's one of the reasons it's a massive hire. We're going to talk more about it this week. Again, if you've been listening since Billy Napier got hired, you know that I'm a huge Ron Roberts fan. Very excited for this hire. I love it. It's a dream hire for me. So I'm stoked and I am ready to be hurt again. But thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day we are available daily and free wherever you listen to podcasts. For Locked On Gators, I'm Brandon Olsen. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter, WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with Whole 9 Sports, Giants Country, NFL 33, and I will see you all tomorrow.